We hit record.
Oh, yes. Can one of you do that?
I did it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, we're very grateful for the support of our presenting sponsor, Talaris Therapeutics. From the very beginnings to the present day, Talaris' central focus has been improving the lives of patients to transform the standard care for solid organ transplant recipients and people living with severe immune and blood disorders. And now I will hand it over to Crystal Rogers, who will talk more about Talaris. Crystal.
Hi. I am just getting my screen up and running here. 1 second. Are you able to see that or no?
We see a blue screen so far.
Okay.
There you go. There's your deck.
Great, perfect. All right, are you seeing my notes as well, or are you seeing just the screen?
We're seeing your, it's not in slideshow mode. So yeah, if you hit that, I think we'll be good.
There we go. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So my name is Crystal Rogers, and I am a clinical research nurse working with the University of California, San Francisco, or UCSF. And I am working with an exciting new trial sponsored by Talaris called Freedom One. This is a fairly complex and involved study, and today I'm just going to provide a high-level overview. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a slide with how to obtain further information about the study, as well as my contact information for those who are interested in learning more. At the end of today's webinar, they will also be sending an email with this contact information. I have to show the disclaimer slide. You are all here today because you or someone close to you has end-stage renal disease. And you are likely aware that there are two types of treatments for end-stage renal disease, dialysis or transplant. The standard of care for treatment is transplant. Medicare actually mandates that everyone who qualifies or has a desire to is referred for transplant evaluation. Transplant provides a longer life expectancy and improved quality of life. Although transplant is the standard of care, it does not come without complications, particularly those associated with immunosuppressive medications that are required after transplant. These medications can cause an increased risk of infection, cancer, and cardiovascular disease, and it can also create a barrier for some due to the cost of the pills and the sheer amount. Due to the known complications of immunosuppressive medications, the transplant community has been working really hard to find solutions to transplant that can eliminate the need of these medications. And the Freedom One trial is just that. Freedom One is a phase 3 randomized clinical trial for living donor kidney transplant recipients who will receive an investigational cell therapy called FCR-001. FCR-001 is comprised of stem cells, which are obtained from the living kidney donor and infused into the recipient the day after kidney transplant. The goal of this cell therapy is to create a dual immune system within the recipient and therefore create immune tolerance to the transplanted kidney. So how does one qualify? You will need a living kidney donor. Both of you need to be above the age of 18. The donor must be age 60 or under at the time of consent, and neither one of you can have a history of any sort of cancer. As I had mentioned earlier, the study is randomized, which means that there is a control arm. So that's a group that would not receive this control therapy. The randomization is 2 to 1, so twice as many recipients will receive the cell therapy, but there still is a chance that you may not. The follow-up for this study is 5 years for the recipient and 1 year for the donors. This slide outlines the trial timeline if you were to receive the cell therapy. We start by obtaining the cells from your donor's blood through a process called apheresis. Those cells are then sent to Telarus, and they create the FCR001 cell therapy. The recipient is admitted to the hospital 5 days prior to transplant and undergoes what's called conditioning to prepare their body to receive the donor cells. The kidney donation and transplant occur, and the day after transplant, the recipient receives the FCR001 infusion. The recipient will stay in the hospital for about 2 weeks and is required to stay close to UCSF for about 3 months following the transplant for very close monitoring. 6 months post-transplant, we start to decrease the immunosuppression medications with the goal for the patient to be completely off immunosuppression therapy by 12 months. The control group undergoes just the standard of care kidney transplant with immunosuppression for lifetime. As I mentioned, I myself am from UCSF, but there are many centers, 18 currently, that are actively enrolling in the Freedom 1 trial, and they're all listed here, so across the country. And then finally, as I had mentioned previously, here are the links to more information about the study and then my contact information. Please feel free to reach out with any sort of questions. Call or email me, even if you're not listed at UCSF, but interested in the study, I'm always happy to chat. Thank you for your time today. And I believe up next is Franco.
Thank you, Crystal. That was a wonderful introduction to our program today. And as Patty, one of my colleagues, for our wonderful team in the West Coast, as we call it, that serves California, Nevada, and Washington. And we hope that you enjoy today's presentation. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for making the time. I know that it's a Sunday and we always have many things to do, but hopefully today's program will bring new information for yourself because it's important to remember that sometimes people don't quite know what options may exist. And today there's an urgent need for kidneys, and the wait list for transplant is very long, as most of you know. For many kidney transplant, for a kidney transplant from a living donor, it is probably the best option. So let's take you through the first couple of pieces for our presentation today. And this is today's agenda, where we're going to start talking a little bit about living donation of kidney transplant. Then we're going to talk a little bit about strategies for a living donor, and then get into some tips to share for developing your own personal story, so you can begin to get that word out and let people know of your personal situation. And hopefully down the road, someone will make themselves available for a donation to you. And also we will provide resources for information for all different pieces regarding transplantation. And then lastly, we'll be advocating for you, the kidney patient, but also your families as well. So let's get started. Here we have Jeff. As you can see, he is one of our wonderful volunteers and members of the Kidney Foundation. And he has gone through some of the different pieces that we have for education, preparation, and support in trying to get his hands around transplant. And he has a wonderful story because he used some of those materials to actually pursue and receive a living donation. So Jeff has been a wonderful ally of the Kidney Foundation, and one of the wonderful stories with respect to receiving a kidney transplant for all his work. And so let's start immediately to talk a little bit about the 7 strategies that we try to encourage you to get started on. And first, we need to talk a little bit about the myths with respect to transplant overall, then know what the facts are and then try to move you to the first real step, a personal step that all of us should be considering in creating your own personal story, because all of us are unique and have unique circumstances, and we may share different experiences, but I think it's important, as you well know, to really tell your personal story. And then second is to also involve your family members and then build a network around those individuals that are close to you and are either directly or indirectly connected, so that you build a nice network of advocates for your personal situation. And then, of course, we always have to get the word out to let people know of what those needs may be for yourself and for family in that regard. And then obviously connecting with others that have been through this journey so that you can learn from them and maybe share things that have worked and that could possibly work for yourselves as well. And then lastly, towards the end, and we're gonna, really focus on this because we're not going to really focus a whole lot in developing a personal plan, but we're going to get you started so that you have time. And then the next session that we're able to bring you all back, hopefully some of you will have that ability and time to develop a personal plan to move forward with our 7 strategies as we talk. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about myths and facts around kidney transplant, because I think that's important to know the correct information versus, understanding or thinking that things are that you've heard or said or have heard from other people or said from close ones. Sometimes not everything that we hear is correct. So let's talk a little bit about that in a bit. Just a reminder that we all know that for kidney failure, there are basically 2 treatments, dialysis, which some of you may be on currently, and we know that there are 2 forms of dialysis, the hemodialysis and the peritoneal dialysis, and there's many advancements that have come along over the last few years. Now we're able to do that at home, which is a big help. But I think the best of those 2 options is obviously a transplant, where you can have a new kidney either from a deceased donor or a living donor to help you in that regard. So let's talk a little bit about what may be true, what may be false, and some of the things that you may have heard. And some of these are very common. And let's see how you do in the next couple of slides. We're going to ask you questions, and then just in your mind, try to answer, and I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. So the first one is, kidneys from living donors typically last longer than kidneys from deceased. True or false? True. Kidneys from living donors typically last longer than kidneys from deceased donors, obviously. And the time varies because, again, sometimes individuals have different circumstances. They may have other health conditions. They may develop something that may affect the new kidney's function, and so on and so forth. But it's important to know that living donors typically have a longer time period where they're able to live with a living donation versus a deceased donation. You can get kidneys transplants before you have to start dialysis. And I think some of you may have that question yourselves today. And I think, don't know if you know that the answer is true. You definitely can have a transplant before you even start dialysis. And that goes back to the whole conversation around, maintaining your health as you're moving along. And if you are developing or have a disease, a chronic condition that may be leading to end-stage kidney failure, and you're getting the regular checkups and healthcare, there may be a point in time where there is, you're heading in that direction for a kidney transplant before you here we go.
Hi, are we having trouble
I
with
think we're
Franco?
stuck.
Okay.
Can we move
Franco,
forward?
did you want me to take over?
Yeah, I can move forward with the slide here. Yeah, if you can.
Sure, yeah, okay. All right, let me find, this is.
Okay, so who, I can just,
Echo, you seem to be lagging, actually.
okay, here we go. Let me go back and see if I can. Okay, here we go.
Michael, if you're having connection problems, I'm happy.
There
to
we
take
go. Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Okay.
Let's move forward with this benefits from of kidneys from living kidney donors. Obviously, better health conditions. There is a lot less waiting time, as we know. Today in California, the waiting time is anywhere from 7 to 9 years. And it's a very long time to be waiting for a deceased donor donation. So obviously, the living donation, if you get it, you can get it, fairly quick, and it also shortens the time for others. It also provides, with a living donation, most living donors have a very small surgery. It's not a very complicated operation as it was in the past. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the medical procedures have advanced immensely over the last 5 to 7, 10 years. And some of the techniques being used have been really, really streamlined. So even the stay is 1 to 2 nights, whereas in the past, you may have talked to an individual that was hospitalized for up to a week to 10 days. So again, all those advancements have helped improve a lot of the transplant procedures currently. And then you can expect a full recovery in 4 to 6 weeks. And the pain medication, I think, is very helpful because even the pain, because the procedure is so streamlined, that the pain that persists over time has been reduced. And we'll talk to a few individuals at the end that are part of the program where you'll hear their personal experience with some of these experiences around living donation. And also, again, there is no special medicine that you have to take. There's no dietary restrictions, although we encourage everyone to continue to exercise and eat healthy as much as possible, and to continue living the life that they lived before, because 1 kidney is just as good as 2, believe it or not. Obviously, we also encourage that the individual continue to get the regular healthcare that they normally have, with regular physical checkups, that they do the follow-up care that they need. And then hopefully, that everything continues to be a normal progress and process afterwards. And a lot of us have questions around who pays for the actual expenses with the donation. And believe it or not, it is the insurance of the recipient that in most cases takes care of up to 100% of the expenses for that. So that's wonderful to hear. And as we know, it wasn't always the case. So who can be a kidney donor? Of course, you have to be 18 years of age, and you have to also you don't have to be of the similar age or the same age as the person that is receiving your kidney. But the blood type, again, doesn't also need to match either. You can have what we call a paired exchange. We'll talk about a little bit in a couple of slides. And so here it is. What is a paired exchange? So sometimes, you may have, or even now, you may have been approached from someone, a family member, someone about donating a kidney, or you may have heard someone that needs a kidney donation, and you may be interested in that possibility down the road. But you go, let's say that you both of you go and get checked and have blood work done, but you're not a match, and so but you still want to donate. So in the situation where you have a paired donation, you may come across another pair of individuals that same thing. One wants to donate to the other, but they're not a match. And so now you have 4 individuals, 2 that are recipients, 2 that are donors, that are not matches directly, but maybe they are matched one to the other. And so you exchange your kidney to that other person, and then the other person, the person that you would have donated to receives the kidney from the other individual. And so that makes it easier to find a donor recipient pair a lot quicker. And so the idea is that if you're willing to donate a kidney and you don't match the individual that you would like to give it to, there's the search can begin to find a match that is better suited, but you give and receive the kidney to the individual. It may not be yours, but you receive the kidney. The person that is the recipient will receive a kidney at the same time that the other person does as well. So it's a wonderful new process, procedure, path that has been developed recently, and you can sign up and register for it. And in terms of the exchange network, if a living donor is not compatible, as we mentioned, with the recipient, the transplant center may enter into the National Paired Exchange Program through the National Kidney Registry. And here it is. The National Kidney Registry works with certain centers to help incompatible kidney donors and recipients get a match. The living donor donates the kidney to someone else, and the donor's chosen recipient receives a compatible kidney from that other person. And in the end, the individuals that want to donate, and the person that is wanted to or in need of a kidney receives it. And you can get in touch and more information with respect to the process and signing up at the website that you see in front of us. And we will provide this information as well at the end of our conversation, in case you don't have time to write it down at this moment. But that is something to think about. So now let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned the myths. Now let's talk a little bit about what the facts are with respect to kidneys and your story in terms of being able to let people know of your personal situation so that they can begin to think about and the word gets out. And the more people know, and the more that your story is out there, I think the better opportunity you have for somebody to come forward for that possibility of donating that kidney. So starting your story,
Yes.
you should share. Pardon?
Oh, okay. Sorry, Franco.
Okay.
I'm happy to take it over from here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Go
no
ahead.
worries, no worries. Yeah, so I will be talking about sharing your story and the rest of the strategies that can help you find a living donor. So creating your story. In order to find a living donor, you first have to tell people that you need a kidney. And so the first step to figure out what you're going to say is we have some tips to offer you through that process. We call that the kidney story. So in this section, we're going to talk about how to create your story so that you can spread the word. So you all have received the participant booklet, and we will put in the chat a link to download that booklet, and we will also share that with you as well in the follow-up email. So in the booklet, you'll see some tips to guide you through how to write your story. Start by talking about who you are and your connection to kidney disease. Include details about yourself. Let people get to know you. Why do you want a kidney transplant? What do you hope to do when you have a new kidney? What do you miss doing because you have kidney disease or you're on dialysis? There's space on page 2 for you to jot down your ideas and thoughts of the worksheet. There's no right or wrong answers. Nobody is going to see your worksheets except for you, so be honest. You can always make changes and decide what to share and what not to share later on. So don't think about it too much, just write down whatever comes to mind. Be sure to include information about contacting your transplant center. People might feel more comfortable reaching out to the hospital to ask questions about kidney donation, especially if they're not sure they want to proceed yet. So, and that communication is kept completely confidential between the potential donor and the transplant team. And so we will share some resources later on to help you with writing your story. So once you have finished creating your story, it's time to share your story and to spread the word. So there's lots of ways that you can let people know that you or your loved one needs a kidney. So we're going to talk about how to share your story now. So start by reaching out to the people you know and gradually reach out to a broader group of people. Most people donate to someone that they already know. So in your workbook, you will see on, I think it's page 3, the circles of influence. And so this graph can help you identify the people or the places where you can share your story. So these people can help you spread the word. They might even consider donating a kidney. So oops, sorry, did I do that? Okay. Does your workplace, your community group have a newsletter or a bulletin board? Do you have coworkers that you would feel comfortable sharing your story with? So maybe not all the ideas apply to you, but hopefully some of them do. And your friends and family can use their circles to spread the word. So the point is, the more your story is shared, the better the chances are of a living donor stepping forward. So let's discuss some barriers. So you might be thinking, what if I don't want others to know that I'm sick? Do I have the right to ask others to donate a kidney? What if I make people uncomfortable? So a lot of people looking for a kidney want to remain private. They might not feel comfortable letting people know that they're sick, but there are people out there who will want to help. And if you don't share your need, they can't help. You never know who will step forward to consider donating to you. And I cannot emphasize that enough. You never know who will step forward. So, and you're not actually asking someone to donate. You're simply sharing your need. So let others respond in their way. Some might consider donation. A lot of people would be very happy to spread the word, and people can just help in other ways, run errands, drive you to appointments, and so forth. So feel free to share your experience in the chat. Have you told other people that you have kidney disease? How does it feel to share your story? How did others respond or help? So later on, we're going to hear from 2 people about how they shared their need for a kidney. This is Gisela. She was one of our past participants, and she eventually found a kidney donor. And she said, my number 1 lesson is this: it's not your job to make others comfortable when you're suffering and uncomfortable. That's extra energy that you don't have to spare. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate to what Gisela is saying. Try to remember this as you continue throughout your journey. So here are some ideas that past patients and families have shared. So they have talked to family and friends when you get together. So whether virtually or in person, and even if they can't donate themselves, they can help by telling others. You can send them an email, send a letter to people you know. You can record yourself and share a video of yourself. You can post on social media. You can speak at community groups, whether that's places of worship, clubs, hobbies, your volunteer group, or you can have a friend or family member speak on your behalf. It's a good idea to approach groups and community leaders ahead of time. Car chalk or sign, that's where you write a message directly on car windows. You can do that. You can have your friends and family write a short message. And as you're driving about town, a lot of people will see that message. Yard signs. This is an idea I had not thought of, but it's a great one. And we will see that it can be very effective. So people driving by or walking by will have a chance to learn about your story. You can post on bulletin boards, public ones, with permission, of course, maybe your apartment complex or your workplace, the elevators, your neighborhood coffee house. There's lots of places where you can post your information. When you do share, make sure you make it personal, include photos, include facts about donation, and don't forget to include the transplant center contact information. this is something that I think will be very helpful. There are Share My Story cards. Sometimes they're called palm cards. So you can pass out cards with your information. Your friends can do that. So NKF has these story cards that they can send to you. So there's the contact information. It's also in your booklet. So don't worry about writing that down now, but you just fill it out and you share it with others. And there is also a digital copy. So we will make this available to you as well. And so this is where you write down the information. If you're savvy enough, you can print that on your computer, all the fill-in information. And you notice that part is upside down. That's because you fill it out and you fold it in half. So this is a double-sided card. And I'm very happy to say that we have a Spanish version available as well. So because we know that a lot of our population on the wait list is Spanish speaking. So this will be very helpful as well. So we are almost done. So next we want to share some resources with you so you can get more help and learn from others. Okay, resources. But first, there's something we just want to acknowledge, that this whole journey can be very overwhelming. Finding a living donor can just feel so daunting. So having kidney disease, especially kidney failure, just comes with a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. It's very common to have depression. So it's normal for people living with this disease to experience depression and anxiety. So know that there is support out there. Social workers at your dialysis or transplant centers.
Did you look through it?
I have a look through.
Social workers are trained to help you and get you the right support. So we at NKF have lots of resources, which I'll go into detail a little bit more in a bit. There's peer support, there's online communities, patient helpline, something called the Patient Navigator, which I will share right now. So the Patient Navigator program is a new and free program for people looking for a kidney donor. So this is where you will be paired up with someone who is a trained patient navigator. So that is a transplant recipient, somebody who has gone through the process. And so together with your navigator, you will work on writing and sharing your story. And because they've gone through the process, they can share their experience, give tips, and answer questions. You will be connected through 4 calls, scheduled calls by phone or video. You can invite one family member or friend to join you, and oftentimes they can be your best advocate to help you find a donor. And if you don't have someone to join you, that's okay too. We are here to help you every step of the way. You will need a computer, a tablet, an email address, and internet access. And we will have a follow-up workshop. So we're very excited about this, because as we were planning for this Finding a Living Donor workshop, we thought, you know, we can provide you all with a lot of good information, strategies, next steps to take, but to actually do it can feel, as I said, very daunting. And so we are offering a follow-up workshop 3 Sundays from now at the same time, 11 to 12:30 Pacific time. And so this is for anybody who from this webinar who is looking for a living donor. So whether you're watching live right now or you're watching a recording of this. So this will allow you to meet with other patients in a small group setting, and you will have a chance to share your story. We do ask that before the workshop, you go through the booklet and begin writing your story. And so I think by sharing your story, meeting others who are going through a similar journey, you will be very encouraged to hear that you're not alone in this journey. So you may bring 1 or 2 friends or family members to join you. If you do have more, let us know. We'll try to make that work. So registration information will follow and will be available at the end of our webinar in the chat today. So the patient helpline, we call it the NKF Cares. So it's a toll-free helpline that has trained professionals who can help you. They can answer questions, they can send you free brochures and other information. If you want to talk to somebody about how to get started with all those steps after the webinar, which strategies to try first, They will be happy to talk you through that. Maybe you're just feeling overwhelmed and you need to vent. They will be glad to listen and provide support for you as well. You don't have to go through this alone. You can call and email us, and there are professionals in both English and Spanish. And we have a peer support program as well. This is where you will be connected one-on-one with somebody who has been there. So if you're a patient who want to talk to somebody who has had a transplant, let us know. We will connect you with a kidney recipient by phone. Unlike the Navigator program, you can talk about anything that concerns you in your kidney journey, not just about writing and sharing your story. You can have one call or you can have many calls. And just to add a personal note, you know, I've had people that have called me one time and just asked all their questions. And I have 2 people right now that I connect with regularly, and it's been several years. And once one of them I call once or twice a year, and the other one we connect monthly. So it's whatever works for you. So if you are somebody, so this is not just for patients looking for a kidney or anybody on just experiencing kidney disease. It's also for anybody who is considering donating a kidney. You can connect with a living donor and ask questions. So just call us, email us, and one of our social workers will will talk to you and connect you with the right person to talk to. You can also connect anonymously with other kidney patients, transplant recipients, sometimes even care partners go on there, or living donors. Connect with online through our online communities. Sometimes they're called chat groups. So you can go on there just to read the chat. You can post questions, and there's a really great group of people out there who will be very happy to chime in. And it's a forum monitored by the National Kidney Foundation. And here's a resource that's not from NKF, but is a national program called the National Living Donor Assistance Center. And they can cover the cost of travel, flight, rental car, gas, etc., for the donor and their caregiver, in addition to lodging and meals during evaluation and surgery. But note that this assistance is dependent on the recipient's income. A transplant social worker or a coordinator has to apply for you. It will also cover multiple living donors going through evaluation. If you find that you qualify, you can include that in your story. Knowing that these expenses will be covered will help you and your potential donor feel more comfortable about the process. And so the final step is just to identify your next steps to create an action plan. In your booklet, there is a worksheet. While it's fresh in your mind, we recommend that you take some time to jot down your ideas for your action plan. What are you going to do this week or this month to start? Maybe your next step is to sign up for a patient navigator or for the follow-up workshop and then start jotting down ideas for your story. Can you share something on Facebook? Can you send a letter, create a flyer, maybe host an event? You can ask other people to advocate for you. You can reach out to National Kidney Foundation for help. Lots and lots of ideas there to help you through that process. So that's it. So we have talked about 7 different strategies to finding a living donor. And so now we will hear from 2 people who have received a kidney transplant, and they're going to talk about their experience looking for a kidney donor. So the first is Alex Berrios from Louisville, Kentucky, and he will be in conversation with Rachel Eaton, who is on our planning committee and who is also a kidney transplant recipient herself. So Rachel and Alex, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Eaton, and I'm nearly 5 years out from a living donor kidney transplant that was done preemptively. My brother and I participated in a paired exchange at UCSF. My brother's was a match for me in terms of blood type. He's a type O, but we decided to go into the paired exchange in order to optimize my match. The amazing thing about Paired Exchange is that I now consider myself to have two donors, both my brother and the person whose kidney I actually have. It's double the gift. I currently work for a company called Square Knot Health, which is a telemedicine practice for kidney care with the aim of promoting transplant first for treatment for kidney failure. And I've been on leave from teaching high school chemistry since 2020. I'm really happy today to be in conversation with Alex Barrios. Alex, before we get started, will you say a few things about yourself?
Sure. Good day, everybody. My name is Alex Barrios. Like I said earlier, I reside in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm 42 years old, and I am a one-time kidney transplant recipient who is actively looking for a second kidney transplant. I currently have two young children. I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. And I am looking forward to sharing my story and helping folks, fellow kidney folks like myself, help them find a living donor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Alex. And just know we're all so appreciative of your willingness to share your story. So speaking of sharing your story, the first time you went through this, how did you feel about sharing your need for a kidney?
So I would say in sharing my story the first time, it is very scary. And I know when I got my first, I crashed into dialysis in my 20s. So about 15, 16 years ago, I crashed into hemodialysis and the disease, thought I had food poisoning. And so understanding that it was a very uncertainty, kind of crept in, and a lot of doubt. And I moved to an area, being not from Louisville, Kentucky. I crashed into this disease with not knowing anybody. So I was very nervous and very uncertain about what was to come with this disease and what that was going to look like. So, yeah, I had a lot of nerves and have since then have learned to be able to be a little bit more stronger and more confident with it. But I was very nervous at first.
Makes sense. Did you have friends and family to help you?
So when in my first round of looking for this kidney, I was with a partner at the time, and I only knew her, so I kind of leaned on this partner at the time, and we found a connection and community with a church we attended. So that was where we found a lot of our help and a lot of like the comfort was there. My family is from all over the country. I've had family in Connecticut. I've had family in Georgia. I've had family in California, all over the country. So locally, I couldn't have a lot of help. So with the help of my partner and our church family, I was able to get the help there. So it was beneficial at the time.
That community is so important when you're going through this journey. You mentioned that your search may have taken some time. Did your thoughts about or your approach to sharing your story change as time went by?
Mm-hmm. I would say that in the time when I was looking for my first kidney, again, apprehension and nervousness about like dealing with the dialysis schedule, dealing with all the doctor's appointments and all the different things that you're having to deal with, getting your fistula and your graft fixed and all those things, it did change at first. In the first probably 6 months to a year, we had people come to tell me when I shared my story initially saying I was looking for a living kidney donor. When people came to me at first, I didn't know how to really respond to it. I was kind of like, thank you, but let me figure out what this disease is and how I'm going to handle it. And didn't know how to say, yes, go ahead and test. It wasn't until it was toward the end of the time, maybe a year after when I had been in the hospital and had a lot of complications that I finally was able to go back to those folks and say, okay, if you're really serious about it, let's have this conversation again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I understand you're searching for a kidney again.
Uh-huh.
And so how are things different this time around?
Okay, so I can tell you now, I'll tell you a little bit. My kidney that I got in my first time around in my 20s, it lasted for 13 years. And then COVID, we all know what COVID happened. So during COVID, my kidney of 13 years failed at the 13-year mark. And so I'm currently now 3 years in, it'll be 3 years on Valentine's Day. I've been on the wait list for kidney, and I actively am doing dialysis. I've done peritoneal dialysis for a year, and I'm currently doing in-center hemodialysis. But the biggest, I think, difference, was while I was transplanted in that 13-year period, I vowed to myself that I would really educate myself and be my best advocate. And I would really go and look at all the resources that we had talked about earlier in the presentation. I made, lots of community friends who are in the same boat as I am as a kidney, warrior going through what we're going through, and having conversation and asking questions and being try to gain as much knowledge as I can and give myself enough power. So I definitely, from the first time around where I was nervous and uncertain while I was transplanted, I told myself that I wanted to make sure that if this was ever to happen again, that I would kind of, give myself enough of, give myself enough armor to make sure I know what I need to do to get a kidney. And here I am still looking, but I've been active in lots of conversations in different, in my local community. I've done a billboard. I've done some local commercials with my local organ procurement organization about organ donation in general. I've done a lot of talks in local community settings, in the library, at my son's school. I'm also part of I am part of the National Kidney Registry right now. And I'm looking for, a living, trying to go through a paired exchange situation. So there's a picture of my family and me. Yes, thank you. And so, and this is my NKR website here, where you can kind of share, you can read my story, and kind of like look to, just if you have questions, I'm working with, again, with the two transplant centers I'm working with are both part of the NKR. So I'm able to kind of, have the opportunity to have somebody donate on my behalf. And then their job, from how I understand it, is the NKR, their sole purpose is to find me a kidney all over the country. Because I'm a harder match, it is definitely not as easy, or generally for folks who are going for a second transplant, it's not as easy to get a second transplant because of high what they call panel reactive antibodies that you just get while you're forming, having had a transplant. And if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me independently off of this. I can help you. I can answer any of those questions for you. But the NKR is a great organization. They're very thorough, and they can really give some great information as well.
Great.
So
Well, that was going to be my next question, is how did you find out about them? How did you get connected with them? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Of course. Yeah. So my time with the NKR is, again, like I said earlier, I am very connected with the different organizations in and around with the kidney industry, in the space between the NKF, the different organizations like the American Association of Kidney Patients. I've done some lobbying as well to help just navigate, like looking at getting the Kidney Living Donor Protection Act kind of passed, those kinds of different things. I've been involved with just kind of sharing my story in different settings. And then with that, been able to connect with the NKR just through Googling and through just kind of conversation with other folks and learning about what resources are out there. That's important to kind of know what's available to you and be able to utilize it. And I end up being I like to be the squeaky wheel and ask the questions and really kind of make sure that, folks understand that there's resources out there for you and to not be afraid of that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to pass it back to Doris. I see Amy on screen, so I'm going to hand it back to Doris, and we have another conversation to share with you, and then Alex will bring you back for some Q&A. a
Okay,
little bit later.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. I learned a lot about the NKR page and all the benefits of listing with them as well. So, and now we have our second patient who's going to share about her amazing, surprising journey in finding a living donor. So Kathleen Strader will share her story, and she will be in conversation with Amy Hewitt, who is the executive director with National Kidney Foundation, serving California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington, and my wonderful colleague. And last year, she shared her spare kidney and became a living donor. So I think the inner Oprah in me just needs to shout that every time I say that. So thank you, Amy, and thank you, Kathleen. It's all yours.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Doris, so much for that very kind introduction. I'm super excited to be here. I will out myself right now. I get very nervous when I do these kind of things. So if I talk too fast, I might pause for a second. But Kathleen, it's so wonderful to have you here. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you and share your story. How about if we get started by you sharing a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Amy. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I'm nervous as well. So I'm Kathleen. I'm from the Portland, Oregon area. I'm a flight attendant for a major airline, and I have polycystic kidney disease. I was diagnosed in 2005, and I received my life-saving kidney transplant from an anonymous live donor on March 28th, 2022. When I was first diagnosed, I kind of put my head in the sand. I was getting married at the time, and I didn't want to think about it. I didn't know what to do. I'd never heard of PKD. It doesn't run in my family. It's very scary being told that you have a life-threatening disease that has no cure, and that dialysis and transplant are the only options for treatment. As time passed, I ended up needing an ultrasound for another issue, and the doctor at that time asked me if I knew I had polycystic kidney disease. So I realized at that point, my kidney function was about 30% and that I was going to need to make a change. I started to focus on my health and seeing my nephrologist regularly, and just making some changes and starting kidney classes. I was listed for transplant in September of 2019. And I didn't want to be the sick girl. My goal was to avoid dialysis.
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that. What challenges or fears did you face in navigating your decision about becoming a living donor? Or I'm sorry, seeking a living donor. No, right?
Well, gosh, like I said, as a flight attendant, I was very afraid of not being able to work. I fly overtime every month. The option for hemodialysis, there was not an option for hemodialysis. I was not able to do, I would never not been able to go to in-center dialysis 3 days a week. And then peritoneal dialysis, even though they will ship your supplies to your hotel, my company does require that I'm on call several times a year, and that would not have been possible at a moment's notice. I was also afraid that I wouldn't qualify for transplant. When I went through testing, the yearly testing, that was my biggest fear, because my only option to continue to have my job and to live the life I love was to get a transplant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I can only imagine. I know when we were talking, you expressed your fears about not qualifying for a transplant. Some of the other things that pose challenges when you thought about that, what were, maybe expand on what those fears were.
Gosh, I mean, just the fact that I thought I might lose my job, I might, lose my house. I'm single now and no one else pays my bills. Just the fact that my whole life would have changed if I wasn't have a transplant. I can't even imagine what life would have been like, because I love the life I live. I love my job. I love the fact that I don't have to think about dialysis, and that except for taking my anti-rejection meds, I'm able to, to do that.
Yeah, I know. I remember when we were talking about this too, you talked about, preparing for the surgery and the paperwork and how daunting that was. And kind of, as you mentioned, being single and your only provider, like having to find a caregiver for those 3 months, all of those things I can imagine were, pose some challenges and hurdles that you had to get over.
Oh yeah, everything, just as far as trying to stay as healthy as I could and trying to find a caregiver. When I first saw that paperwork about having a caregiver and having to have someone available, they told me I had to have someone available for 3 months, 24/7. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't have anyone that can do that for me. Everyone I know works. And one of my first thoughts when I saw that was, I'll never be able to do this, because even if I can find a transplant, I don't have anyone to help me. But what I was to do, I did have a main caregiver who did go to my meetings with me and who I stayed with after my surgery. But I also had other people step up to help. Several different people stayed with me after my surgery, and other people stepped up and took me to appointments when I wasn't able to drive. And I mean, it did take a village, and I was very fortunate to have that help, because without it, I don't know what I would have done. But the goal was to find me a kidney and to save my life, and I had so many people who were willing to help.
Yeah. So speaking of them, how were your friends and family involved? I love how you talk about them. So please share more about your tribe.
Oh, well, I have an amazing tribe of friends.
There they are.
Sorry, I was like, where did you go? I have an amazing tribe of friends, and one of my girlfriends, actually several of my girlfriends did test for me, and they were disqualified. So they had a garage sale for the American Lung Association and raised several $1,000s. And they had decided that my goal was to get a billboard at the time. I had looked into a billboard. It was obviously too expensive and not something that I was going to be able to afford. But I thought how wonderful that would be. I had seen a billboard before, and I thought that would be wonderful to get the word out to the community. Because once my friends and family had tested, then I knew I had to reach out further to the community. And so we had talked about that as a group and decided that was probably not something that I was able to afford. But she said, my friend said to me, we'd like to have a garage sale for you and to raise money for your advertising. And originally I said no, I thought it was too much work. And they called back a while later and said, we want to help you. We don't know how. Please let us host this garage sale. And I think my response was, honestly, if you really want to. And so we set about it as a group of us, using all our different abilities. And we had a garage sale. We raised over $12,000 from the garage sale. We also were able to have 26 families involved in their donations. And it was a huge success. It was over the 3-day weekend. And again, we raised $12,000 through donations, as well as the garage sale. It was priced. You could give whatever you chose to give. And we raised the money. And then we also were able to procure a $25,000 donation from Pacific Outdoor Advertising.
That's amazing. That's amazing. An in-kind donation, I'm sure. So that is so fantastic. So I'm curious, tell me about the other things, the ways that you deployed those funds raised at the garage sale.
Well, we were able to rent out, one vinyl billboard and about 7 or 8 electric billboards. They were in the Portland and Salem area. And then with the leftover funds, we also were able to purchase car magnets and yard signs, as well as t-shirts. And I also had a dedicated Facebook page.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So we'll get back to why those lawn signs were significant in a minute, but tell me about your IT friend, Kathy, and what she did and how the communication strategy that was put into place.
Okay. Well, what would happen was if someone, saw the signs and would send an email, they would receive a dedicated response, and it would just tell a little bit about me and that I had polycystic kidney disease, that my kidney function was, I think, about 10% at that time. And I think it even said she loves the beach and all animals, especially dogs.
Sounds like a dating profile.
Yes. And then when people would respond to that, she also did ask, also, please tell us where you found us, how you found us about my need for a transplant. And then it also would give the information for people who are interested in getting more information, or for, possibly testing the donor for the transplant facility.
Okay, awesome.
From there.
I know social media was a very useful tool for you too. Where were you posting at? What kind of content were you putting out there? Because I think that moved me in how you shared your story.
I did have a dedicated Facebook page. It was Find Casey a Kidney. And I just really went on originally, started talking about my need for a transplant. And then we did post about the garage sale originally for people to donate, and that we would, any donations would be appreciated. And then we posted about the garage sale and, the dates and such. And then after that, we posted about raising the money, and we had this wonderful donation from the billboard company. And just every step of the way after that, when I had somebody who was testing, that someone was testing at the time, and unfortunately when someone was disqualified, we'd have to start over, as my insurance required or would only allow testing of one person at a time. So it did take quite a long time, for each person, as once they would start the process to when their process would end. So we just would put everything out there as far as trying to be as vulnerable as possible. And the goal was to hopefully find someone who was really willing to donate me their kidney.
Yeah, and I really love that you kind of shared the peaks and the valleys, and that somebody was going through the process for you and all of that. And then if it didn't go into the next step, I think that I like the idea that you weren't necessarily asking, you were just sharing with people what your story was and your journey. So I think that piece of it is really important and powerful. So I wanted. You also did some TV interviews and things like that I thought were pretty cool also. So I think you just found every avenue you could and didn't say no. So I really admire that about you. And the radio show that you did, what was that called? Remind me.
I think it was Feel Good Friday.
Yes, that's awesome.
It's about a story. They actually found me from my other news appearances and wanted to talk to me about my situation. And that was pretty nice.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's get back to the piece about the lawn signs. Tell everybody how beneficial that was.
Well, I had some friends tell me that they thought that the lawn signs wouldn't be very effective, but that is exactly how I found my donor. My donor is a mail carrier, and my sign was in a yard of a friend, so a woman I do not know, who was advertising for me, and he was working on someone else's route. He was helping out, so it's not his regular route. He said that when he drove to the neighborhood and saw the sign, that he saw it. He didn't think much about it. As he continued on his route, he said he couldn't stop thinking about it. And so he went back and took a picture of the sign, and then went home and went forward with sending the email and continuing on to the transplant facility. And he ultimately was my donor. So beautiful. I love this idea of like turning intentions into actions. Let me ask you something, and this might be kind of a hard question, but what would you do differently? Do you have any regrets when you look back about your process and what got you to the point where you were at? Probably the biggest thing I would do differently is I would have said yes sooner when my friends asked if they could help me. People want to help. And if you let them know that you have this need, they do want to help, and they will do their best they can, to help you. And I just thought it was too much to ask. Again, I really tried not to ever ask. I mostly just shared my story and told people, and then they could take that information and do with that what they wished.
Yeah. Two more questions, and then we'll invite Alex back in. What has blown you away or surprised you in unexpected ways throughout this process?
Oh my gosh, there are so many good people in this world. So many people who are willing to help. I say this all the time. You turn on the news and it's awful things there, but there's so many good people in this world. I had so many people step up to help or offer to, maybe they weren't interested in trying to donate a kidney or they weren't able to do that, but they would offer to put a sign in their yard or a magnet on their car. Or I had people who, just donated to the funds to raise money for the advertising. There's so many good people in this world.
Yeah, I agree. How would your donor describe the experience?
My donor, his name is Matt. He is amazing. He said he would do it again if he could, and that it was easier than he thought and more rewarding than he could have ever imagined.
Yeah. And I would agree with all of those things 1000%. And it's, as a living donor, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to help and to, see somebody help them live out their dreams. And so I am in full agreement with him. So why don't we bring Alex back and we can answer some of these questions that have come in. But Alex, I think I'll start with asking you the same question. What has blown you away or surprised you in unexpected ways throughout your process and your journey?
Sure. So I'll definitely have to kind of piggyback with what Kathleen just said, and that there are really, I'm shocked that there's so many really, really great people in this world who really will do anything they can. As I'm working on trying to find my second donor, I've been able to have people tell me, I can't donate for you directly, but I would love to spread your message. So they are able to, through social media and through just conversation, help champion for me. And I've become a champion for myself, and I wasn't that way at first. But as I've kind of going through this the second time around, I've learned to champion for myself. But to know I still have a tribe of people, family from afar, and friends that I've made in my time here in Kentucky. It's been amazing to see people just come out of the woodworks. I have a small little anecdotal story. My fiance and I have been posting on social media. We had been looking for just a coffee table in our home, and we just posted to say, hey, does anybody know of any free places or free things where we can find a table or an inexpensive one? And a fellow friend, a colleague of mine, sort of in the work I've been doing in the kidney space, out of UCLA, reached out to my fiance and said, hey, I can't give you a kidney, but I can buy you a table for your family. And she bought us a table. It's you just don't think about like all these beautiful souls that are out there that will do so many simple things to make our lives just a little easier. When I was also getting my kidney, when I was waiting for my kidney the first time, I wasn't driving to my dialysis center at first. And so the church I was attending, there was a group of 3 people who were willing to take, me to dialysis and back while I was kind of doing the in-center hemodialysis, and would bring me lunch and things of that nature. And so it's really pretty amazing to see that. Yeah.
I agree with you. There's a question that came in, and I'm wondering what your thoughts on this from both of you. How did you cope with the ups and downs of waiting and having donors evaluated and rejected? Maybe not hearing from your center as often as you would like. It might go back a little bit to what you were saying about advocating for yourself, Alex, particularly with your center. But what was that like? I imagine it was a roller coaster.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say, yeah, it was definitely an up and down kind of emotional roller coaster. And I can speak to this time around as I'm looking for another kidney. While I was transplanted, I had the fortunate enough opportunity to work for a transplant center in Kentucky. And so I had I kind of knew the ins and outs of kind of what that process was like. So I not only had a professional kind of element of working in the transplant world, but also as a patient kind of seeing it. So interestingly enough, now as I'm waiting to know the ins and outs of what the kind of process is like, it becomes really uniquely challenging because I know what they're doing. And I know that I have to be respectful of there's HIPAA, there's certain things they can't tell you And so you have to understand that. But so yeah, I think I said in my comment earlier, I'm learning patience. I'm learning really a lot of patience to say, okay, I know this is a process that's going to write itself out. And, like anything else, it does get frustrating. And it does I think in my case, for my first donor, she was a lady I went to church with here in Kentucky. And she walked me through her journey by telling me every single step of the way she was going through it. So she would say, oh, I'm meeting with this person. I'm getting evaluated with this person. I'm doing this. Okay, and in 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing this. And so she told me what was happening. So that helped me feel at ease. But a lot of times some people don't want to do that. And you respect that. You understand that they're dealing with it at their leisure, at their perspective. And, you have to understand that people who are wanting to test aren't going to want to tell you everything. She happened to want to tell me everything. So I was able to know what was going on. So, it just, every situation is different. But
yeah, I agree. I agree. Anything to add to that? If not, Kathleen, I've got a ton more questions, but I'm sure that the emotional roller coaster was something for you too.
Absolutely. For me, I only knew a couple of people that tested, that told me that they had tested. So I didn't have that person to say, this is where I'm at in my journey. I mean, with the first couple of people who did, and I didn't know when they were disqualified, but when we started reaching out to the community, obviously I don't know who those people are. And I would know my transplant center would tell me that people were testing, and they would kind of tell me what area they were, and then they would tell me if they were disqualified. But I had the luxury, I guess, we had over 200 people inquire from the billboards. I had over 70 people fill out paperwork. And my center told me that I had the most people ever sign up to try to be a donor. So I knew that I had other people behind. I wasn't just counting on that one person. I knew, even though it was a huge roller coaster and I cried a lot of tears, I knew that there was still, I would always ask, is there anyone else in line to test? And I was incredibly grateful that there was. And so we would start the process again. But however, my kidney function would obviously be dropping as time went by. So it was definitely a roller coaster.
Yeah. So this is kind of more, I think, a question specific for you, Kathleen. Do you know where those magnetic heart signs came from?
I don't know. I mean, I know I could get the name.
Find out.
But it was a friend of mine. Their business did business with another company that offered those.
Okay. I think it's probably easy enough to find out. There's some questions that we're getting about just the social media aspect of it. I know, Kathleen, I believe your friend started your own Gmail account that was specific to your need for a kidney. I think it was kidneyforkc@gmail.com. But she monitored all that. But did either of you set up new Facebook pages when you were launching onto this journey, or was it your own existing one? Or
no, I did set up a separate Facebook page, the Kidney for Casey Facebook, and that was specifically tied even in the response letter people would get who sent the email. It would say you can follow our journey on Facebook with our Facebook page.
Yeah, and I same here. I have a couple pages, and I've had people kind of go out of their way, other fellow kidney, champions kind of create a page for me. And then there's just kind of, a lot of posts kind of happening about, helping me find a kidney and things of that nature. But yeah, I do have another social media page as well.
Yeah. I know that kind of along this line, and Kathleen, I know in preparing for this, you and I talked a little bit about this, filtering out the people that aren't, serious or, coming up with some crazy ideas. I think you just, there's this going to be a percentage of people that aren't serious about it are, going to approach you with, some crazy ideas. How did you have to navigate that a lot, or was it minimal in comparison to the people that were wanting to do good?
I did have a few people ask, how much we would pay for a kidney, which is obviously illegal. I also had a few people who sent an email, stating that they could find me a black market kidney and that they hoped that I would survive because finding a live donor is difficult. But for the most part, I mean, it was all positive. I had another person who saw one of my news interviews and jumped to the conclusion that I was saying that I was too good for dialysis, which is absolutely not true. It's just because my job as a flight attendant, that would have been incredibly difficult for me to do. But for the most part, people that actually did respond were very warm and welcoming, saying things like, I've seen your billboard, I pray for you. I've had other people say, I'm also a living donor, or I've met other people who have been involved in the kidney journey on both sides of it. So really, was much more good than bad in my experience.
Yeah. It's nice to see that people are, agreeing that the, Facebook blast has helped. And I think as much as, getting that positive feedback and reinforcement and knowing that people are good and want to help, I think is really important. I'm curious, and I know we've talked a little bit about this, about this throughout the afternoon, but what would you say to someone who's looking for a living donor?
Oh gosh, just don't be afraid to share your story. I've had, people tell me I could never ask for a kidney, and I really felt like I never personally asked. I just shared my story and I said it was what I needed. And if people are interested in more information, they would ask. And if they're not, then that was fine too. It was more like, this is what I need. And if you would like more information, I'd be happy to share it. I'd be happy in the beginning. I was happy to take your name and give you more information if you're interested. But mostly it was just there are people that will want to help. That's my main story is there are really good people in this world, people who want to help you. My donor was he was anonymous. I didn't know who my donor was until 6 weeks after our transplant.
How about you, Alex?
I would say, it's important for those folks who do have apprehension, who are a little nervous about wanting to share their story, again, to find somebody you can trust and who may be a loved one or a clergyman or somebody, who you might want to, who you believe can help advocate and champion for you. I think that's important too. And it sounded like Kathleen, you said in your situation, you had your friends who are going to help advocate with you as well and kind of do that. And I think it's important. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. We get thrown all this information when you go to the doctor's office, and if you can have somebody kind of be there and advocate for you in the beginning to kind of like write down the questions you might have or help you find those answers, and then be able to say, I understand if you can't donate for me, but would you be mind championing for me and passing the story and sharing the story in your circle of influence? Because it definitely, you're going to find that it's not going to always be the person directly who's going to donate. It's going to always be that person of a person that you find more success in getting that story, getting your story told and getting that living donor.
Absolutely. I mean, my donor found me from a yard sign in a friend of a friend's yard. And I did not know.
Yeah, I think that, and as we were preparing for this, I think, ultimately, one of the messages to get out of this is that people are willing to help. And, it's that gift is, could come from someplace that you never would have imagined. So, ask for the help, know that there's a ton of resources that are out there and available to you. I think that, and we're here for you. We've got all of the resources that NCAF provides, and there's a whole network that want to be able to support you on this journey. I think that might be it on the questions that have been coming through. If we didn't answer anything, or if there were some that were of a personal medical health that we couldn't respond to, we will get back and answer those as much as we can. I really appreciate both of you, one, taking the time and sharing all of this, for your willingness to, be vulnerable and put it all out there. I will say, again, from the perspective of being a living donor, it is one of the greatest gifts that I've, second to becoming a parent, one of the greatest things I've ever done as a human being, and would do it again 1,000 times over. And so anybody who's thinking about it, take those intentions and turn them into action. And I describe my process as, just taking the next step and following through the journey. And it led to something that was really life altering for the recipients. I was part of a 4-parent exchange, and and it was life altering and a gift that that will continue to give for the rest of my life. So very powerful. Anything you guys want to add before we end this part of the session?
Actually, I have a question. So Kathleen, I don't know, did you talk about like the runs that you did?
Oh yeah, you should share those.
Yes. So tell
The
me
one that
about
you
like
talked
life
about.
after you got your kidney. And you have an upcoming plan with your donor. Talk more
do.
about
I
that.
do, yes. So I am a walker. I'm not a runner, but I am a walker, and I have done 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, and full marathons in my past. And my short-term goal after my transplant was to feel better, and my long-term goal was to finish another full marathon. So about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks after my transplant, I did my first 5K. And then since then I proceeded to do 2 10Ks, and then about 2 weeks ago, I did my first half marathon. And my goal is in this December, my donor and I are going to do a full marathon in Honolulu. And we're going to do it.
Amazing.
We're going to have shirts that say kidney donor and kidney recipient.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Anything else, Doris? Any other questions?
I'm wondering, does anybody have, I'm always curious to know, we provide information on finding a living donor, but I find, so I'm a transplant recipient, but when I was on dialysis, I knew about peritoneal at home dialysis. I knew about getting a transplant. And I'm just wondering, do people not get information? Is there any help from your dialysis center on finding a living donor? Kathleen, I know you didn't go through dialysis, but I'm curious to know.
I would say that there wasn't in the beginning, the first time around, there was a little bit of information, and this was like in 2006, 2007. There wasn't as much information, and fast forward now 13 years, 14, 15 years later, now I'm looking for again, and I'm back on dialysis, and the information is a little bit more robust, but yeah, it's there, but I think that it could be better. I think it could definitely, it needs to be, I think, kind of disseminated a little differently, I think, in how they're bringing it. Because I think sometimes they bring so much information at you about finding a living donor that they just kind of give you websites and phone numbers, but they don't really actually truly help you. They just give you the data and you just have to deal with it yourself. And that's where I think there's a struggle there that I've seen in my opinion. But yeah.
And I had also thought, I mean, I know this isn't dialysis related, but also about the paired donation, that was something that when my people were trying to test, they would say, are they willing to test for someone else? And share that would help me personally. Just they would be like, oh, if you're not a match for her, do you want to be a match, try to test for somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't explained to my potential donors.
Yeah. And Franco talked about this earlier, but the paired exchange program, I think sometimes there's this myth that, when you see signs, so-and-so needs a kidney, are you blood type A? And transplant centers will say that's a little misleading because then they don't tell you there's the paired exchange option.
Right.
So just because you're not the same blood type or compatible blood type as your loved one who needs a kidney, that doesn't mean that you can't get tested. So for all of you, who are going to spread the word, I would suggest not including the blood type. Let the transplant center figure out if someone is a good candidate or not. And it turned out for me, I didn't share that in any of my stories, the blood type information. And my donor turned out to be somebody who was not compatible, but I don't think he was ever told, in the beginning that you can't get tested because you're not compatible. He was just entered into the testing process and became my donor, and all worked out great. So that's important.
Yeah, I originally did not know that. I was telling people that I had to have an O positive donor. And people would say, well, I'm B positive, and I would think they would not have been able to donate. And now I know that they could have.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe in a future program, we'll hear more from the living donor side, because I think living donors are like the most amazing people. And, like Amy has said, and so like all the living donors that I've talked to, they they all say, I would do it again. And it's just, and I've also heard people say when that living donation process happens, it not only benefits the recipient, it benefits the donor as well, because all the amazing goodness that, they receive from that. And then one of my favorite thoughts is, when you give somebody a kidney, you're not only giving that person a second chance at life, you're giving the world more of that person and all the goodness that they're going to put out there. And so, I think this is all a really exciting process, but it's very overwhelming. And, as someone looking for a kidney donor, you feel very vulnerable. You feel very, anxious, and the future is uncertain, but certainly there's a ton of help and a ton of resources, and know that, we understand that. And so we are offering lots of one-on-one and small group help to talk to you personally about that. So anything else that anybody else wants to share? Okay.
Lots of positive feedback about how helpful this has been. So thank you. It's really, each time we do one of these sessions and know, that we're busting some myths and, getting people the right information and information that they may not be getting elsewhere. It warms our hearts. So thank you.
So
Thank you very much. I feel very honored that you asked me to speak today.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Kathleen and Alex, for sharing your story and
Sure.
be very open, because it's not always easy to talk about that. And especially Alex, you're kind of back in the process again. And so that can be easy. But thank you for, the NCARE website was really helpful.
Sure.
So thank you all. Thank you to Alex and Kathleen, Amy, and Rachel also for sharing about yourself. Thank you to our Patient Education Committee. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Teleris. Just a reminder, a follow-up email. You will include slides, the recording to today's webinar, registration link to the follow-up workshop. And I believe that link may be in the chat as well. You will receive a separate email with a survey for today's webinar. And so please fill that out. You will be eligible for the $50 gift card door prize. So stay safe. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.